Welcome to the Growth Experts Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Colin. In today's episode, we have a special guest. His name is Enrico, and he is the co-founder of Revify Analytics and Revology Analytics. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Derek. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. So can you share a bit about your background and your role and how it fits into the bigger picture over at Revify?
Yeah, absolutely. I started off in finance my career, and then ended up covering different roles across a large organization, which was at the very beginning General Electric. And then fairly soon in my career, I stumbled upon the world of pricing and completely fell in love with it. And since then, over the last 2 decades, I had a chance of creating from scratch 3 different pricing organizations at multinational companies such as H.B. Fuller, Berry Plastics, and MSC Industrial Supply. And after leaving the corporate world, I started doing consulting. I co-founded Revify Analytics, and I'm a partner at Revology Analytics. And I've been helping many different customers walking through, the pricing roadmap and how to monetize pricing for their benefit.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So when it comes to, monetizing pricing for the benefit, is it impactful in a good way in terms of, EBITDA? Does it help their bottom line? Can you kind of give us some more details and elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's generally the part that people found the most interesting, right? Especially
Yeah.
PE companies and business owners. But effectively, if you take a step back, the pricing side and PE companies, some of them are realizing that more and more is one of the most underutilized pricing levers for profitability. And so a lot of companies look at how do I expand my multiple or how do I expand my EBITDA? And most often than not, companies are not focusing on the pricing angle, which is the only lever that you can move that affects both the top line, so the sales line, as well as EBITDA by the same magnitude at the same time. So what I find in most companies is a tremendous amount of untapped opportunity. And of course, there's reason why people don't focus on that immediately, but it's a huge value creation lever that many companies underutilize.
Hmm. Interesting. And you work with some of your clients are in the PE space and private equity.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spent my career through different industries, so this applies to any industry and any company you can talk about. Of course, less so in companies or countries where pricing is extremely controlled, either because we have monopoly type of situations or because legislation does not allow you to do much about pricing. But that's a niche of the marketplace, right? For the remainder of the business, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And so the idea about Revify Analytics, which we launched about a year ago, is to actually help out mid-cap and so small and medium distributors and manufacturers that don't have the capability or the funding to be able to hire large pricing teams or install multi-million dollar software in order to improve on their pricing processes. And so that's where the company comes in and provides that expertise, the people, the process, the capability, so that they can adopt these best practices and be able to compete much more effectively.
Can you give us an idea of your type of client, whether it's manufacturing, e-commerce, et cetera? Can you kind of give us an idea of, what types of clients or industries that you have worked with in the past, aside from being agnostic?
Absolutely. Yeah, the majority of the work that we do is around B2B. So we target the larger companies, which could be consumer product goods or could be large manufacturers or distributors or even, food in pharma, more on the Revology analytics side, which is more your white glove, complete pricing transformational type of effort. And for that, obviously, you're looking at 6 to 9 months projects and much more hands-on type of collaboration with existing pricing teams for the most part. On Revify Analytics instead, we are working with organizations that don't have that type of capability or funding to be able to go after it. And so the sweet spot in there is companies that are around 10 million to, let's say, $500 million in revenue and haven't really spent a lot of time working on the pricing processes. And
Mhm.
it includes typically B2B companies, but specifically manufacturers and distributors.
Hmm. And from my understanding, you and or your team, you kind of do a consultation, with these industries or organizations, top down from the founder to CEO or the COO, CFO, and from there, you guys, after you provide a consultation, you kind of go in and look at what's working, what's not working in terms of, their, I would say, shipping and receiving certain things. And how do you identify that exact number? Okay, this, looks like, we can make an adjustment here so that you can gain an extra 10 cents or $500 or generate an additional 500K this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it all starts with the data, right? And that's one of the things that typically tends to paralyze companies when they start, is that there's
Mhm.
always a bit of a fear aspect around pricing, right? I don't want to break anything. And
Yeah.
that's why it's important to A, understand the data, but B, have people that have done it before and have practiced it. And so the way we operate with our clients is exactly using the same methodology. So step one, as you mentioned, is actually doing a diagnostic, right?
Mm.
So speaking with the customer and understanding both from a quantitative perspective, assimilate the data and be able to show them examples or where we see opportunities, as well as on the qualitative side, right? So the only way that you can get traction on pricing is really playing as a team effort. So
Mhm.
you can have one person, a pricing leader in a company, saying, you know what, let's do a 10% price increase across the board. Well, if everyone believes that's crazy and that's gonna never gonna happen, guess what? It's never gonna happen. Or if it
Yeah.
is enforced, it's going to be a disaster, right? Which is what everyone is trying to prevent. So the way that we design a whole process, having done it many times before, is to first run a diagnostic and then take the customer through the next phases of maturity and evolution. And each phase is basically designed to be self-funding for the next phase. And of course, customers can stop at any phase they want to, if they are ready for a sale, to if they are PE owned and so on, or if they need more time to digest each phase.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. So what major shifts are you currently seeing in your industry right now?
Well, what is interesting is that the attention on pricing actually starts getting heightened when the tougher, when the going gets tougher. And so tariffs was a great example of companies all of a sudden realizing that their pricing processes were not up to scratch. Right. When you start your costs climbing and you start realizing that your pricing is not getting passed on fast enough for you not to eat the difference, all of a sudden that becomes a great catalyst to say, hang on a second, we got some broken processes here, right? I thought we did a 5% price increase. My bottom line is only showing 1% improvement. Where did the rest go? And that's a wake up call. And what I would say is that, especially now in the age of everything moving faster and some companies starting to adopt best practices and AI,
Mhm.
companies that are still thinking about doing something around pricing are unfortunately going to be left behind and going to be the victims of entire economies moving past them and pricing better and better.
Mm. Yeah. And yeah, technology, tech stacks, and different types of AI companies, software as a service, fintech. There's a lot to compete with. Very competitive market, and things are going to start shifting quickly. If not, a bubble may pop.
Yeah, and you do see different speeds in the economy, right? So you have the very large organizations. When I was an MSC Industrial Supply, it's a $4 billion industrial distributor. So massive size compared to a mid-cap type of company. And of course, that comes with the size of the team that I had and a budget at my disposal to be able to articulate how do we price 2 million SKUs at the same time in the most optimal way. Now
Mm.
you shift gears to a mid-cap type of company, they don't have capability to build a multi-person team or invest in technology. And if they're still relying on Excel spreadsheets or sales rep trying to get the best price possible, they're leaving so
Mhm.
much money on the table. And to give
Yeah.
you an idea of magnitude, I generally see those companies having at least 100 to 300 basis points of top line and margin that is just sitting out there leaking from the bottom line. And
Yeah.
a lot of companies will kill, right, to be able to have that type of immediate growth at their disposal without
Yeah.
knowing that it's there, right? You can go and get it. You just need to have a plan.
Yeah. I mean, 300 basis points, that's a huge shift.
It is. And
Money,
especially
money.
companies
Yeah.
where margins are already on the reduced side, the impact to EBITDA is even bigger. And so
Mhm.
you start talking about the magnitude of the pricing implication, and you start thinking about, well, can I get that in volume? In many companies, 1% price increase equates to 6% or more volume extra you need to get in order to get the same profit margin improvement. Some companies don't even have supply chain capability to be able to provide such a big swing on volume. So even more
Yeah.
so, you should focus on getting as much price as you can where possible.
Yeah. And they can, reallocate those funds towards better improvement or new technology or,
Right.
scaling the business if they decide to exit, especially with PE, if they're looking for better valuation and productivity. So,
Exactly.
uh,
Instead, what they end up doing is cost cutting, right? But
mm,
we all know you
yeah.
cannot cost cut your way to growth, right? At a certain point, you're going to reach a limit where there's not much more cost to cut. And yet,
Hmm.
if the expectations or your desire is to keep growing the profitable part of the business, eventually you need to tackle pricing. So why wait until you get into that corner?
Yeah, yeah. Especially if that's all they're good at and they're not innovative. And unless they bring in, that innovative leader and that thought-provoking person, the CEO or the founder, who can help with that scale, which most often they do. But if they don't and they're just cutting costs and they're amateurs, then yeah, there's money leaking for sure.
Absolutely. And you do have sometimes you have CFOs that are really good at understanding the P&L, but not
Hmm.
always have the direct connection of how margin and those levers all interplay, right? So to your point
Yeah.
is an education factor, but what I find is typically people in those positions are super smart. So it's not a question that conceptually they cannot get it. Very often they understand it, but they are paralyzed by the fear factor of it because very often what people associate with price improvement is you need to do a price increase. And they're
Mm.
saying, well, in this type of circumstances, I don't think I can afford a price increase. But the reality is not that, right? Improving price does not mean you improving or increasing price. Is
Mhm.
about how do you manage the discounts and the internal controls in order to improve consistency. And that's where we typically find a ton of money without having to risk losing customers is because you're fine tuning, you're not trying to move the whole organization by doing a massive price increase and hoping it works out.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like if the money's hidden. It's like it's right in front of their nose, and you just kind of remove the veil, if you will, so that they can discover that, which is awesome because it's literally sitting right within their organization. They don't have to make any major shifts to access that, additional money, or make the right valuation for increasing, whether it's different pricing or maybe lowering their pricing to bring in even more revenue. It really depends. So are you guys like certified accountants or like how does that work?
No, I would say we are definitely certified practitioners because we've done
Uh,
this so many times, and we've learned by the good and the bad in terms of the mistakes that we made in our professional careers, just like any seasoned executive. By the time you've done this for a couple of decades, so that's it's at the end of the day. The thing is, the executives can make the decisions, and they'll typically make the right decisions. The point is, do you have the right data in your fingertips? Do you have the right
mm,
interpretation of the data? And then the executives will typically make the smart decisions once they have all the facts on the table, right?
mhm,
Because otherwise, they probably wouldn't be an executive for the company if they were not trusted with making decisions. But then the next phase is how do you actually execute that change, right? And that's where we also help organizations out because very often the engine may be there, right? You have the executive team, you have the decision making, but then you're missing the transmission that carries that decision down to the wheels. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's where the road meets the rubber, right? So even if you have a clever group of executives making decisions, if the rest of the organization is not aligned, is not believing in it, is not compensated the right way to make it a win-win for them too, then it's very difficult to empower them to go to a customer with a straight face, be able to talk the talk, and be able
Mhm.
to come back with that enhanced profitability if all of these, different dominoes are not aligned in the same direction.
So how has the trend of, AI and technology impacted your business or growth strategy?
So for the time being, it hasn't been transformational, right? The majority
Mhm.
of AI that is happening is right now on the at least the generative AI has been more around email and communication writing and letters to customers and so on. So that's
Mhm.
definitely helped in terms of expediting and clarifying communication. It hasn't fully morphed into the AI side of actually generating recommendations and being able to calculate scenario analysis. For that, we've been working over the last 10 years on what was not considered as sexy as AI is today, which is all the machine learning. So when we were talking about a diagnostic for a customer, we do a deep dive and we understand things like price elasticity, cross-selling, and so on, which is all calculated statistically through machine learning. And so we're able to actually simulate for a customer and say, hey, for this group of customers and products, if you move price by 2%, here's what's going to happen to your volume, right? Or if you have all these customers that are buying product A, here's all the customers that are most willing to also buy product B that you could be selling to those customers, but you're not. And so
Mm.
be able to articulate beyond pricing all these different pockets of opportunity, including also calculations around customer stickiness, right? So which
Mhm.
customers are likely to stick with you, which ones are showing patterns that likely means they're shopping around or starting to move away from you. And some people today all cast it under AI. For us, AI, once we get to that more computational side of it, is going to be the next big unlock, right? In order to do this even bigger and more efficiently. But we still call it machine learning, which is what it really is behind the scenes.
Hmm. Okay. And what about certain applications or software that, is proprietary that helps for a specific need within your industry? Or are you guys working on any AI or technology that can kind of help streamline certain things internally, or to like a simple application processor or something that like an intake form or anything that you guys use for your clients?
Yeah, we use Claude extensively for coding. So we have our own proprietary coding where we are running all these analysis based again on a decade plus, 2 decades of expertise together with our teams. And so we basically generating all of that code so that we can ingest customer data securely and then run it right within our control space. The risks that I see holding people back is computational models that are available today on LLMs that everyone has access to tend to, of course, have the potential risk of privacy breaching, right? So you don't want to your massive data of customer information or confidential information out there for LLMs to digest, because obviously you don't have certainty that that could be kept secret throughout and it's going to be outside of your network. The type of analysis that the systems still do today is still more predictive, right? Just basing how LLMs typically work. And so that's
Yeah.
not necessarily giving you the best predictive way of pricing your business and monitoring your business. So we still
Right.
think at this moment in time, having our own coding is the source of strength and proprietary approach for our company. Down the road, I suspect that AI will become smarter and smarter, right? Once we get to super intelligence, and if there is some privacy controls where companies can actually put a boundary right around where the
Mhm.
data goes, I wouldn't be surprised if companies were able to run all of this themselves right,
Yeah.
in-house. The question still then becomes, from a strategy standpoint and from a change management standpoint, even if the system has given you all the answers, are you able to orchestrate that within an organization and get it implemented? I think then the human factor is going to be still super important, right, to be able to actually get the results that people are looking for from a P&L standpoint.
Yeah. And keep in mind, AI is still artificial, not super intelligence yet. It isn't sentient or anything like that.
Yeah,
Not
you don't
that
want
we
to.
know of.
Yeah, you don't want it hallucinating when you're trying to come up with the best price to a client, and the client just looks at you like, "What?
Yeah.
Where did that number come from?" Right? And then,
Yeah.
but that's the key, right? So you have to be very careful about how you position your business and how you price it, because it's a
Mhm.
reflection of your brand and your competitive standing in the industry. And one of
Yeah.
the things that paralyzes people is, and they're right, if you make mistakes in front of your customer and that costs you trust, how expensive is that, right, to recover it? And so I always caution people, it's like, sure, you can take your data and use AI to tell you what to price. You may get what you paid for, and it could be a very costly mistake.
Yeah. Enrico, co-founder of Revify, thank you so much for joining us on the Growth Experts Podcast. It's been a pleasure. If you guys want to check out Enrico's website, that's myrevify.com. Go to myrevify.com. And he's also located on LinkedIn if you want to check out his profile. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. This is the Growth Experts Podcast. Enrico, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. See you soon.
See you soon.